What's up, y'all? My name is Philip Jordan. I am the host of the SEC Brawl podcast. For more SEC content, go to the description below and subscribe to the podcast to get the full episode. Joining me right now is David Waters. He is the host of the Gators Breakdown podcast.
Man, it feels like out of nowhere, or maybe not for you. You're so follow everything with Florida stuff, but Florida spring practice is this kind of one of the earlier start times for Florida when it comes to spring ball?
Absolutely, it's usually a mid-March start time for Florida, no matter who the head coach or administration is. And lo and behold, last week we get word. I started hearing it last weekend. Hey, spring practice might be starting a little bit early, and I didn't think it was going to be announced a day later that, it's only going to be starting a couple of days from now. So, it surprised some fans, it surprised some media people, because Dan Mullen had posted a picture on one of the social media sites, and he there was some text at the top of it saying, getting this last workout in a couple of days before practice. And I'm like, before practice? What are you talking about? So I started, messaging some of my media friends, and they were like, "Okay, let's start asking around a little bit." So we all sent out fillers to the some people in the administration. Yeah, spring practice is going to start Thursday. We were like, "We're going to tell us before this?" So it is a little bit of a surprise that it is starting early. And we got to talk to Dan Mullen in his pre-spring press conference, and one of the questions, of course, why early? Why throw it? Well, why throw spring practice out there this early? And he brought up a couple good points with that. He said, with no travel for recruiting now, they have a lot more time to evaluate the film from the previous season. So they had done all their evaluation from the previous season already, and they were like, well, we can just we can go ahead and start spring practice. There's nothing holding us back from starting spring practice right now there. So they got all their evaluations, since they don't have to travel for recruiting, got all their evaluation out the way, and they were ready to start. And he brought up, this also helps the players that are taking part in spring practice, because now they have an extra 4 or 5 weeks that they can go back and watch all this film from spring. So now, you'll be wrapped up in mid-March when everybody else is starting their spring practice, and those guys can go back and learn from what they did right, what they did wrong in spring practice for an extra 4 or 5 weeks. So with all the change going on at Florida, it's probably pretty good that they can go and watch film, evaluate themselves. The coaches can evaluate the player for an extra 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, and when I was reading and looking into getting ready for our conversation, I did not really realize how young of a Florida team this is coming up, because there's a good chunk of players. This is their first time go around with spring ball, because obviously you didn't have it last year because of COVID and everything, and then this year, this is a very, very young football team.
Yeah, Philip. I mean, think about it. Kaiir Elam might be the best player on Florida's football team. This is his first spring practice. He was He come in the fall of 2019. He wasn't an early enrollee, so he didn't get that spring practice. Didn't get spring practice last year because of COVID. So he's going into his third season, and this would be his first spring practice. So if you were not an early enrollee in the 2019 class, this is your first spring practice. So there's a lot of, and I believe on the roster right now, I think it's 44 or 45 players of the 77 on the roster. This is their first spring practice. So, I mean, it's for a Florida team that was very experienced last year on the offense and defensive side of the ball, you got a lot of new faces out there, and some new coaches out there on the defense that, this is their first time working together in the spring. And I think you could tell Florida was one of those teams. If you go back to a year ago, I thought all the experience Florida had would help them with spring, with missing spring compared to other schools out there. But I also think it hurt Florida a bit too, because when they got in trouble on defense, there was just nowhere to turn. They had to stick with the experienced guys, because I do think missing spring last year didn't allow them to turn to younger players, probably when they would have in the past.